Howdy, gang, and welcome once again to the Duct Tape Studios. I'm Jeff McAleer, your host here at the Gaming Gang channel. Thanks for joining me once again. Before I get into today's review, do want to mention if you enjoy the Gaming Gang and you'd like to become a supporter on Patreon, we do have a link to that in the show notes. And of course, be sure to hang with the gang over on Discord. You will find an invite link to our Discord server also in the show notes. So today I am going to share my review of the Traveler Core Rulebook Update 2022 from Mongoose Publishing. This 264-page hardcover with PDF, if you order from Mongoose Publishing, carries an MSRP of $59.99. If you want to grab just the PDF alone, you can do so over at DriveThruRPG for $30. Having said all that, let's swing on over to the other camera because here I've got the updated core rulebook for Traveler. A few things I want to mention before we get stuck in. First of all, the fine folks over at Mongoose Publishing were kind enough to provide me with this review copy, but neither I nor anyone else affiliated with the Gaming Gang has received any other sort of compensation for me to share this review with you. It's important you know that. We're also not going to look at each and every page of the book. I do want to give you a really good feel for what you're going to find inside. Now, if you follow the Gaming Gang, if you visit our website, you might be wondering, well, wait a second, Jeff, I thought you've already reviewed this updated core rulebook. I personally have not. About 2.5 years ago, we did have a correspondent who shared a written review, but I myself had never taken a peek at this until it arrived from Mongoose Publishing. Now, you might also remember I shared a review of the box starter set that used to be available from Mongoose Publishing, but that was prior to this update. Even though it did have the entire core rule book broken up into 2 books, that was the old edition of Traveler, not the 2022 update. So this is a brand new review. I am not recycling reviews, just so you know. First thing we're going to do is take a peek at the credits page. A lot of folks worked very hard to bring this to life, so let's give credit where credit is due. Now, if you are not overly familiar with Traveler, it is the venerable science fiction role-playing game which arrived on the scene in the late 1970s from Game Designers Workshop. And in the summer of 1981, I purchased the little black box that contain the 3 little black books. So I go way back with Traveler. In fact, first couple of editions, as well as some of the offshoots like 2300 AD and Mega Traveler. But until the point I shared that review of the box starter set, I hadn't actually taken a peek at anything from Traveler in decades. So I am excited to share this review with you, because I have an extremely nostalgic spot for Traveler. And the reality is, mechanically, the game has not changed radically in the decades, which in my opinion is pretty cool. So all you need are 6-sided dice in order to play Traveler. You don't need any polyhedral dice, just 6-sided dice, and you are normally going to be rolling a couple. So as far as our attributes, we have 6. We have strength, dexterity, endurance, intelligence, education, and social standing. We're going to take our 2 6-sided dice. We're going to roll up all 6 of those attributes, and then we are going to choose a career. Now, if you are going to play an alien race, you would choose that first, but the vast majority of travelers do tend to be human or human-ish. So what we're going to do is we're going to choose our career. Now, we will have opportunities to gain skills prior to joining a career. Now, it's possible that your character went to university, or maybe they're just streetwise, picked some things up along the way. Now, there are a lot of misconceptions about Traveler out there, and I am going to shine some light on many of those in this review today, because I think there are people out there who are scared off from checking Traveler out that really shouldn't be. one of the first things that people have a misconception about Traveler is it's very complex. As a player, this is super easy. You're rolling two six-sided dice normally, and you're going to add modifiers or subtract modifiers from your roll. You're looking to meet or exceed a target number, and that's it. I mean, that's really what you're looking to do. Combat's the same way. You're still rolling to meet or exceed a target number, and then whatever you're using, whatever weapon, you're going to roll your six-sided dice as far as what kind of damage it does and go from there. Like I said, very easy, especially for the player. Now, of course, there are some additional things that the game master must juggle in a game of Traveler or a Traveler campaign, but that's not unlike other role-playing games out there. The game master usually has their plate full. We'll talk a little bit more about some other misconceptions too. So what we're going to do is we're going to take care of our pre-career skills, and then we're going to decide, okay, what career do we want to join? This is kind of an overall list of the various different careers. So you've got things like agent, army, drifter, marine, navy, noble, rogue, scholar, scout. Each of these careers will also have 3 paths within. So your player character is going to choose one of these paths. We're going to have qualifications. Now, it's important to keep in mind, it's not that you need to have this number or higher as your attribute score. You are rolling that attribute. So a citizen, you need education 5 or higher. So what you're going to do is you're going to roll your 2 six-sided dice. You're going to add or subtract the modifier you have for education, and that's it. Oh, well, guess I'm not going to be a citizen. Now, automatic qualification for a drifter. And the thing is, you'll change careers more than likely, because what you'll do is you will embark on a term, and it's a 4-year term. You're going to roll to see, were there any sort of mishaps that took place? Were there any like big events which took place? What kind of skills have you gained? Or maybe an increase or possibly decrease in an attribute could take place. So another misconception about Traveler is how often player characters would die during character creation. And it would happen quite often if the players themselves were really pushing their luck, because as you complete 4-year terms, your character is aging. So it wasn't unusual way back in the day to have players pushing their luck. Their player character was 70 years old by the time they were finally going to muster out and become an adventurer. Now, the actual buying of the farm is more an optional aspect to the character creation with this updated core rulebook. It can still happen, but it's more optional. And then, I mean, you could have mishaps that take place which seriously injure your character, which would lead to maybe having augmented body parts or having medical expenses. So one of the cool aspects about character creation with Traveler, it's also a storytelling prompt. So when you finish creating your player character, you will have a story of that player character. It's also recommended that your group roll up characters together, because there are some events which might tie your players together, their characters together, which is very nicely done. Something to keep in mind too, you have to roll for your survival. If you fail your survival, you have to leave that career. So you will see many player characters will have a variety of different careers. Now, it's very possible somebody wants to stay in the military and keep gaining rank, another die roll you have to make. But you will also be earning benefits from each of those terms. And of course, the benefits are going to depend on the career. But the thing is, if you had, let's say, 20 years of a career, you would maybe have two different careers during those 20 years. You get the benefits from those two careers. It's not just the career you finished up with. So, very nice aspect to the player character creation, in my opinion. One thing I will say is a little bit weak in this updated core rulebook are the alien species available. Now, Traveler is not the sort of science fiction role playing game that we have tons and tons of intelligent player character species available anyway. But I would have liked to have seen a little bit more. Now, as far as skills go, these are gained through your experience, through your career. You can also learn skills as an adventurer, as a traveler. And the skills essentially will provide you with bonuses to your dice rolls. Now, if you are untrained in a skill, you will have a -3 modifier to your roll. That is a huge penalty on 2 6-sided dice. Now, you can have 0 in a skill, which basically means you don't get the penalty. You don't get a bonus to your skill roll, but you don't get the penalty. Normally, what will happen utilizing your skills, you're going to have your skill modifier and also an attribute modifier. You're going to combine those together, roll your 6-sided dice. Ooh, that didn't look good. Combat. Something else that's a misconception with Traveler is combat is really, really crunchy. It is not the case. Once again, same core mechanics for action resolution. Yes, there are actions, there are free actions. We have a little bit of crunch here and there. We've got grappling and dodging for cover and stuff like that, armor, obviously enough. But the combat section in this core rulebook is all of 9 pages. So no, it is not overly complex. So what you're looking at as far as combat goes, you have weapons. Weapons will have so many dice of damage. If you hit with the weapon, you're going to roll your damage. And what you're looking at is the target is going to take that damage. Now, there might be armor. There might be a way for some of that damage to be soaked. Once that's taken place, anything left over is going to come off of the endurance. Now, if you have 0 strength, 0 dexterity, 0 endurance, your traveler has bought the farm. So combat is very lethal. It is very deadly. And the reality in most traveler adventures, if you're engaging in a lot of combat, something's wrong. And get ready because you are going to be losing player characters left and right. Combat doesn't run on for 30, 40, 50 minutes. Now, as far as the main differences, to my understanding, with this updated core rulebook compared to the Traveler core rulebook that came out in, I think it was 2017, we do have starship construction rules in here, which were not in that original. And I think there's been some tweaks to the dogfighting rules for space combat. You'll see we've got loads of equipment. We've got loads of gear. Another misconception about Traveler is you need to have umpteen books in order to really play Traveler. That is not really the case. Everything you need to get started and to start running adventures in Traveler is located right here in this book. You don't necessarily have to go and buy High Guard with more spaceships, or the equipment catalog for more gear, or the vehicle book for more vehicles. Everything you need to get started is right here in this book. Now, one of the complexities that kind of turns some people off is space travel. Space travel does have some complexities here. Once again, this is something that's mainly going to be handled by the game master to have to figure out. As far as the various different planets out there, we do have a planet profile, which can look kind of complex just to start off with, just at a glance. It is not as difficult to figure out as you may think. Once again, we do have the starship construction rules in here. Now, is this all encompassing? No, absolutely not. But it is here in the book. As far as starship combat, the core concepts are very similar to just personal combat. Now, we will have different aspects of responsibilities that each member of the crew is going to tackle. So, a good game master is going to be able to keep all of their players, all of their travelers engaged during starship combat, because each of those players, their characters, should have some sort of role to play on the starship during combat. So, pretty cool. We also wrap up, we get some information about psionics if you want to utilize that in your game. And then another aspect kind of scares some people off is trade and upkeep of starships. A lot of this stuff you can hand wave. I mean, that's the reality of it. If you want to delve deeply into every single credit that needs to be spent on fuel or trading materials and goods, sure, you can do that. Most of the time, from my experience, most game masters, most players, they prefer just to abstract that and just kind of have an idea. Here's where we get the world and universe creation. This is where we're going to get a breakdown of what that planet profile means. And it's a bunch of numbers and letters. But once again, it's not that difficult to figure out. All right. So that is a peek inside the updated Traveler Core Rulebook from Mongoose Publishing. Let's swing on over to the other camera so I can share some final thoughts as well as my review score. So as far as the production quality of this updated core rulebook, artwork throughout is good to excellent. I didn't stumble across anything that I thought was a major clunker as far as the artwork goes. Paper stock, nice and thick, heavy paper stock. This is a book that should hold up to repeated use at your game table. Now, as far as the presentation and layout, like it quite a lot. I think an issue that people had with the previous Mongoose Traveler release was it was kind of a throwback to the 1970s. I don't know. I haven't seen it, but I kind of heard through the grapevine that the presentation, the layout was very clunky, very old school. People didn't dig that. Well, don't worry about that. It is a very modern look to the presentation now. Only issue I've got as far as the way the game is presented is I think the character creation could have been a little tighter. I was doing a lot of flipping back and forth to make sure that we were rolling up characters correctly, which we were, but I think it could have been a little more streamlined as far as the presentation to walk it through. There is kind of a flow chart to it that isn't all that helpful, to be honest. There's also no introductory adventure, which is always a bummer with a core rulebook. Yes, I get it. There is loads and loads of material out there for Traveler, both this edition and previous editions of it. So it's not as if you aren't going to be able to find a good adventure to run. But I always like to see an introductory adventure in a core rulebook, not necessarily so you can run the adventure, but more get an idea of how adventures are constructed for that IP. Because a lot of times we have a very different approach to how adventures are presented based on what system they're for. That's why I like to see that introductory adventure. And it also allows a game master to run something for their players without running out and buying something else. So I got to ding this updated core rulebook for that as well. But all in all, this is a fantastic core book. I like Traveler. As I mentioned earlier on, I have been a fan of Traveler since the early 80s, even though I went decades without really diving too deeply into anything that was coming out for Traveler. I think it is the go to science fiction role playing game. That is the biggest selling point. And another misconception of Traveler is that you can make the sort of role playing game in a science fiction setting you want. So if you want something that's more hard science fiction, a la Isaac Asimov or maybe Arthur C. Clarke, you could certainly do that. If you're looking for something that's far more space opera like Star Wars, you can do that. If you want a campaign that focuses on the players kind of traipsing across the galaxy, you can do that. Or if you want the player characters to be traders and merchants traveling the space lanes, that is an opportunity. There's a campaign that's out there where all of the player characters are in the Navy. They're in the Imperial Navy. That is an option for you. There's also a release out there for mercenaries. So if you want to do more of a hammers, slammers kind of campaign, you've got that available to you as well. I think there's a misconception that some people have about Traveler that it's only a certain kind of science fiction role playing game. And that is not the case whatsoever. I personally think this is an excellent core rulebook, even with my minor quibbles. So, on a scale of 0 to 10, I give the Traveler Core Rulebook Update 2022 a 9.5 out of 10. It is that good. If you want to run a science fiction role playing game that at its heart is mechanically fairly easy to wrap your head around, especially for players, but also provides you the opportunity to include a little more complexity, this has got to be in your collection. All right, that is it for this time out. If you liked the video, by all means, please give it a quick thumbs up. Subscribe to the Gaming Gang channel if you haven't already. And if you do subscribe, don't forget, ring that bell. It'll not only let you know when I share videos such as this review, it'll also inform you when my live stream, the Gaming Gang Dispatch, airs Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday evenings right here on YouTube at 7 p.m. Central. Once again, I'm Jeff McAleer. Thank you very much for watching. And until I see you next time, certainly hope all of you get to enjoy plenty of great gaming with your gang.